This video is on the service of the Lionel subway cars. This particular car is an R27. It's one of the expansion cars. All the cars are the same, including the power car. The only difference between the power car and these is when you lift the shell off, it's all plugs. On these, you'll see there's a master plug on the end which slides in and out. Now, when you first service these, especially the power cars, these screws here, which hold the shell, will not be removable on the power car because the trucks don't turn enough. You're going to have to remove the side trucks. But remember, the side trucks are left and right, and there's a short and a long screw to each one. Make sure you put them back in the same place. So I'm going to remove now these Phillips and place these screws over here. If you have something to hold these cars, it's much, much easier to do because they tend to bounce around and you don't want to scratch your plastic. As you can see, with a thin screwdriver, these screws particularly come right out. Also, if you have a magnetic screwdriver, it makes it much easier. So we're going to flip the car over. I'm going to lift straight up. This here is the plug I'm talking about. Now, you can see I've added people to these subway cars. I get these on eBay. You can get 50 or 100 for like 25 or 30 bucks and hot glue them in. Now, some of them are not exactly O-gauge size. That's fine because in models building, we trick the eye. You can only see them through the windows. It looks fine. Underneath this panel here, and you take two screws out. They're short. I'll put them aside because I'm going to put them right back. Is the master control for each car. This is the TMCC interface. Now you can see I've added tape to hold these wires down. Over here, I've added, a short protection. These are easy to install, as you can see. These are TVS's, and it's where the power comes in from both trucks. So this is here now, protecting each board. I do this on every car because every car is connected to the power, and each one has this Lionel interface board. These boards, which are for your destination signs, can be removed. On the powered car, they have to be removed if you're going to take the shell off this part, because what happens is everything is hardwired and they will not just lift up like this. So I've placed these back in. You check to make sure. As you can see, it has places it has to sit. Make sure that it goes into them. Here, we did not. There we go. As you can see, it popped in. That's also why I make sure the wires are not being pinched anywhere before I would do final assembly. There's quite a bit of wires in here, so you want to make sure. On these cars, on the dummy cars, there isn't much to service. You keep these lubed. I recommend running these in both directions all the time because the brass bushings in here, if you run in one direction, tend to wear in one direction. And then this slip movement, which allows the car to go in and out of switches, stops. And you'll get it banging a switch. All of a sudden you'll say, why is it banging? Also, the TMCC interface cable, on this particular car, I haven't done it, but I normally put a small piece of tape here just to hold it. On some cars, it gets pinched as this rides back and forth, as it moves, and it shorts it. Doesn't cause an immediate problem, but it can be a problem down the road since we never know when these parts are going to be stopped being made. So now let's look at the cars. These are the slide tracks that hold the bottom of the doors. They lift up and out with no problem. They go on either side, anywhere. Now you'll see I've done work on this because I've put some black tape just to hold the wires in place. There's a lot going on in these cars, so it can be a little difficult. When you're servicing them, the doors can go in any place. There's no left or right to them. So I always start on the outer door first. There are 2 screws that can be tight because they put a red epoxy. It is not Loctite. I don't know what it actually is, but you can see it's a short screw and you can actually see it. Once you remove it, you'll see what I'm talking about on how fine these mechanisms are. You slide them straight up, the dog bone comes out. The dog bones are interchangeable. So now we'll turn it over. As you can see here, this is a fine, built like a fine watch. As the doors travel all the way open, they compress on the slide track, ever so slight on these screws. Then they close, and they'll do this. Watch, if you can see the motion. See how it slides? I don't know if you can actually get it, but it can compress. That's for over travel. That's to protect it. The problem occurs when this here gets dry, they stick. So you get this in the doors, and they won't open or they won't close. And yes, I have a lot of clocks in my house. This is a red, plastic-friendly, sticky paste. Not paste, grease. I put it in a syringe, which you can order on eBay. It's really for oil. So what I do is I squeeze it on, put it on the tracks, and I run it out so that it gets in there. I place it in here, 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 and here. And then I bring them back. And you see now how it releases right away. See how it opens up nice? Okay. On the ends, we have brass bearings. Now, you do get some grease on these bearings, but what I like to use, it's a synthetic lubricant. We use them in clock repair. It's a fairly heavy oil in the sense that it's not 3-in-1. I put a drop here and a drop in there, and I run them back and forth a couple times again. And you could see the oil and the grease react with each other on the ends where it picked up the grease from the slide, and it's moving even easier than it was before. Nice and easy. Okay, so there's one. The difficult one now is this one. This is 2 doors and the motor compartment. So I have to remove the piece of tape I put here to hold the wires back. I'll just pull it up. I'll put it on the side so I can put it back. I like to use the Gorilla tape. It's better than duct. It's a lot better than wire tape. And you can shape it and hold it and it will stay and nothing will come apart. Now, these motors, wires, have to be tucked in back in carefully. So you need to keep an eye on when you start lifting this stuff out. I don't usually unplug them because there's enough wire. As you can see, this motor has plenty of wire. I'm going to pull this one off. Let me get my needle nose. And you can see it holds nice and tight and protects the wires from moving, because there is a lot of wire in here. So we have 2 screws. We have 1 screw here. These screws are not the same as the other door screws. They have a round head and not a flat head. And they're also a little longer and a different thread size, so don't mix them up. The other thing you have to be aware of, let me drop that screw, come on. Okay. Is when you lift this motor out, and the other dog bone, of course, like I talked about, comes out. There are, let's see them, little washers. Now I've glued mine in place. These spacer washers are very important. You need to make sure you put them back. If you don't put them back, you're going to have problems. So we're going to open this up. Oh, we're going to open them all the way up. And you can see it's basically the same thing as the slave doors. So we're going to open these up. And the first thing we want to do is put a little grease on these gears. And work it. Once you get the grease worked in as it is, you put a touch of oil. And what the oil does is make sure nothing gets too tight. Okay, now the oil's worked its way in. It actually acts as a carrier for the grease. And the doors are moving now. Okay, so now we're going to grease these threaded rod. One of the biggest problems with these is this over travel slot when the doors close. They stick and then they bind. These motors are designed that if they sense any binding, they stop immediately. So that'll be why you'll say, well, geez, I put them back and it doesn't work. If the doors bind anyway, it stops. And that's for the protection of the gears, because the gears, obviously the gears are a weak spot on this. They're plastic. We worked that a couple times. I'm going to take our oil, a drop, a drop, a drop. Now you notice I put a little more on this than on the other one, on the slaves, because these do more. These are first in the circuit, and these basically control all the other doors. So you want these to travel the easiest. These are fairly high torque motors and they're fast. So you're going to see, as you can see in here, they spit, but it doesn't spit anywhere that's going to be a problem for you. So I've worked these doors. To make sure, I want to make sure I don't feel any bind when they open. And there's no bind. So when I put them back, you see that's closed all the way, as you can see. I always back it off a little so that the doors have a little more over travel left in them, just in case. You can set these dog bones any way you want, okay? The spacing of the door. So Lionel puts them so they're snug. I put them so they're a little backed off. That way, if they over travel a little, I'm not relying on this to protect everything. See, those doors are closed now. But I could go almost 15 or 20 more revolutions. That's where Lionel wants them. I want them. I back it off until I see the doors start to move. See them starting to open now? This one's opening a little quicker than this one. So I close it now until they just touch. And it'll line up with that dog bone. See? They're loose. That's the way you want them. And I could do the same thing here, see? They're loose. They're not, that's tight, that's loose. That's the way you want to do it. It's safer that way, and you'll never have an issue. Now, well, let's do the last one on this side. Now, these have actually been serviced once before, so I'm only doing this to show you guys how easy it is. Just when you take the screws out, be careful. I mean, you're screwing into plastic. So don't over tighten them, just snug them in. So we take this one out. And either I missed this one or I don't know, I must not have done it. This one's never been done. So as you can see though, it moves very freely. So I'm going to close it. Pull grease on it. Okay. And now we'll bring it in. Hold them from the back. But these are actually made by fine watches. I would have to say this is Lionel at the pinnacle of their technology. They haven't made anything that comes close to this. I mean, I know the big steamer guys are going to say, well, our steam engines do this and that. But the reality is, there's nothing as advanced as this. The big steamers are nice, but these are the real thing. Lionel did their homework on these. I wish they would reissue these in IRT cars. So now I open it up. The oil gets right into the brass bushings, which are on the end. That's why I say they spared no expense here. Bring them closed and start opening until you see the doors move, and then bring them back. So these are done. We've done one side. So I'm going to look. I have to see they're lined up. The slots are lined up for the dog bones. So we've put the first one back. Actually, I'm sorry. We put the power back first. Make sure your wires don't get pinched. And like I said, glue in the spacer washers. It's the easiest way to do it because they tend to fall off when you put them back in. And then the next thing, you got a problem on your hands. So I'm going to put the screws back in first for the motor. Like I said, a magnetic screwdriver goes a long, long way. I have to take it out because the screw moved. And believe it or not, the washer came out where it was glued in. Both of them came out. There you go. So now you get to see it all the way around. Oh, yes. Let's see. There you go. Okay. And we're going to take... Okay. This is Elmer's glue. You don't want to use anything in there that's permanent, because if it gets on a thread, it's going to be ugly really fast. Because I guarantee the minute you do that, within a day, you'll have to service it again, and it ain't going to come out. Okay, that's good. That's one. I like the Elmer stuff because it doesn't give you any type of permanence. It holds them in place. I mean, it's purple, but it does work. if you guys have any questions, just send me an email or just ask me straight out and I will answer within 24 hours or so. So I'm going to let this dry for a sec. And get my Phillips. All right, let's put it back again, shall we? Learned a valuable lesson, all right? The glue I used must have dried last time, so now we've placed them where they need to go. We take a little screwdriver just to move them around. Take my magnetic screwdriver. Put one in. And put the second one in. And now it's in tight. So these doors are done. They're in. You take your ribbon cable and start pushing it back between the motors where Lionel has it originated. Now, one of the things you look for is these solder spots on these limit switches tend to break. So what I like to do is I like to check them before I button everything back up, because I've already done a car or two. Go to put it back together, put it on the track, and the next thing I know, I'm taking it apart again. This tape, all it's doing is holding the wires in place. We take this one, we're going to put it right back where it was. It just forms a bubble to hold the wires up, because there is a lot of stuff going on here. So, what we're going to do is take this one. Yes, I'm missing one of my dog bones. Anyway, take a dog bone, you snap it in. Once it's snapped in, you push it into the other one. Now the door is in place. Take a screwdriver. Just snug. One turn only. I don't want it tight. If it's too tight, you strip it. You're not going to get another one of these cars to fix it. So, oh, anyway, here's the other dog bone. I cheated. I stopped the video because I couldn't find the dog bone. And I said, well, I'm just telling the guys not to lose them. And what do? So I pop this dog bone in. Now, if you use your subway cars a lot, as I do, on some of them, this receiver starts to open a little, and the dog bone will drop out. The fix is you take a pair of channel locks, vice grips, anything you've got that's super tiny. I have small clamps that I use, which are probably the best, on clockwork. And you clamp it on it for a night, and what it does is slowly starts to close the plastic. Once that's done, you take some of your black tape, a very thin strip, you put the dog bone in, and you go all the way around. What you're preventing is it coming all the way out and sliding out. Okay, so I'm going to take this one now. It's ready. It snaps right into the other one. And there it is. So I'm going to take this screw and just put it in gently. Do not over tighten them. They just go in nice and easy. No big deal. Don't force anything. If it doesn't go, take a look why. Because I'm telling you, these things are easily injured. So now, these are done. You have these tracks, and these, you see they have an edge. All they do is slide in here. And it just guides the door. It really doesn't do much. But What I always like to do is I take just a touch of this oil, and run it back and forth, and then put it. Because it's plastic on plastic can bind. So this now will make sure it doesn't. The other thing is, do not worry. If you break these little tits off, believe it or not, Lionel still has these in stock. I bought a whole bunch of them just in case. Run it back and forth. Slide it in. And you can see the doors are in there, but they move okay. Now these will, what I call, seek their own level. You can see they're all warped, and that's just natural. So what will happen is, as the doors start to move, these tracks are actually designed to move up. They'll slide up and out of the way a little, just enough. You can see this one actually had some grease on it from my last service. And we'll put that in, and they go in. I'll put this like this, turn it around, so I can do the other tracks. It's not a lot of oil, it's just enough. If you put too much, just give it a quick wipe. And just put everyone in. And like I said, these tits are real easy to break off. I can't tell you how many of them I've broken off. And I look at it and I go, wait a minute, I didn't do anything. They just snap off in here. Also, I have found a bunch of them over the years that they just broke off in the holder. So I think there's pressure on them when the doors move. My advice is, with the TVSs, put them in every car, not just a lead car, because every car is connected to everything electrically. You get a blowout in one car, it could take every car with it. So now these are all lubed up and ready to go. I'll put my little cap here for the oil so I don't lose it. My grease gun goes there. Take this out. You have to make sure this piece here is loose. Okay? Excuse me 1 second. Oh, I guess not. The phone stopped ringing. Okay. Now, the other thing, too, is these people, you're going to see some of them are slanted. That's because they're near a door. And when the door moves, you do not want the heads to hit. The heads can hit. So you have to try. It's trial and error putting them in. But once they're in, you'll see, and we put the car back together, how nice it looks. So this is done. This plug here is going to go here and slide down. So you put it on. It's done. I slide it like this. I come back here to my little screws. And these screws here, again, snug them in. Do not over travel them. These things strip out pretty easy. Now, Lionel does sell replacements. These cars, the receivers for these screws are actually slide-ins. So if you do strip one out, they still have them in stock. You can buy them, and you slide it back in, and then you're good to go. You don't have to worry about fixing the shell. That's why I say this is probably the pinnacle of Lionel service and construction. They really did their homework on these. These things are made to last. And I'll put the last screw in. And I'll show you the people again. Let's see. I don't know if you can see them. If I put, you can see there are people. Oh, you can't see it. But there are people in the car. You can see the heads. So that's it. That's the service of a Lionel subway car. As I said, any questions, please email me.